back to the Tin Barn. I'm Pragmatic Lee, and today we got a little simple project. I think will be simple, but it's going to involve some lathe work, a little bit of mill work. On the lathe we'll be doing some turning and some threading, and then over on the mill just some milling some flats on what we turn. I've had my Precision Matthews lathe, 1127. I've had it, I guess, a little over a year now, and had never had a use for the back plate. As a matter of fact, when I got the collet chuck for it, I stole the mounting bolts off the back plate to use for the collet chuck, 5C collet chuck. Made a backing plate for it and borrowed, if you will, the mounting bolts for it. As I say, I've never used the back plate, but there's been several recent projects when I'm looking back on them, I think, well, you know, that would have been a good job for the back plate, or the back plate would have been a whole lot easier to hold the item than the four-jaw was, been balanced a little better and so forth. So today we're going to make some more of these. Of course, they're metric. The thread on them is 10 by 1.5. So we'll be cutting metric threads on the lathe. The length on them is in imperial about 1.75. Let's see what that come out into in millimeters. About 45 millimeters, thereabouts. We're going to make it 1.75. 3 of them would be 5 1/4 plus the parting saw, the parting tool width. So I'm going to go at least 6 inches material to begin with. The material I'm going to be using, I don't have any 3/4 stuff. Well, let me tell you where the 3/4 comes in. The diameter on this is 19 millimeter. That's 0.748. So we're going to use 0.750, 3/4 inch, because imperial collets is what I've got. I don't have any metric collets yet. I've got probably 8-10 feet of this 1-inch mystery metal here. It's a bit rusted on the outside, so we're going to turn that down to the 3/4 instead of going off and purchasing some 3/4. The flats on here are 17 millimeter. That's the only thing we'll be doing on the mill on this, is making those flats. And I will do that to 17 millimeter since there's so much else on the lathe and the mill that is 17 millimeter. And I have a wrench for that mounted on the machines. So the first thing I'm going to do is go outside where it won't be so dusty, use the portable belt grinder, and clean some rust off of this. I got the piece mounted in the lathe now. I went ahead and put a center in there, and I've got the tailstock on there. Got about 6 inches pulled out here. I'm going to start turning that. Have no idea how hard this is going to be, but I'll turn a little bit of it and then bring you back when we get close to our dimension of 3/4. All right, that was 40 thousandths, and that cut pretty good. I'm gonna go ahead and get 60 thousandths now. Of course, I'll put some lube on there now, and it's gonna smoke, I'm sure. I've got the doors open in the tin barn today. Very pleasant outside, about 64 degrees Fahrenheit in the shop now. So I got the doors open, got the fan going. We'll get that smoke out of here, and I'll stand out of the way as well. All right, we'll get a measurement now. And we're going to set a dimension on the x-axis of 0.750 is what we're looking for. We're currently reading 0.918. So we got 167 thousandths to go. I'll bring you back when I get a little bit closer. Okay, we're ready to make our final cut. I'm going to reset the dimension. We're looking 0.750, and we've got 762. So we've got 12 thousandths to go. All right, I'm going to move the carriage stop out of the way and put the parting tool on there, and we're going to part this off and have our 3/4 inch piece to work with. We'll slow down a little bit. And I'm using the automatic feed on the x-axis now. Just keeping a good, steady, slow pace. And keeping plenty of lube in there so that chip can get out easy and not bind up. All right, there it is. All right, I'll get the 3/4 collet set up in the chuck, and we'll start turning down for threads in each section. Got the 3/4 collet chuck in there now, and got our workpiece in there, good and tight. We're going to use the same parting tool here. Get set up on the end. Zero out the DRO, and we said 1.750 is what the overall length was. Now, I'm not going to part this here. I'm just going to put a witness mark there. All right, I'm going to get a tool with a little more point on it here. And the long thread is 0.710. So we'll put a witness mark right there. Then the length to the end of that shoulder is 1.275. So I put a witness mark there. Now let me jot these dimensions down. That way I'll have them when I get to the next one. Now we want to turn this down for a 10 millimeter thread. Okay, according to the documentation that I've got over there on metric threads, which is just something I found on the internet, it says on a 10 by 1.5 major diameter should be between in imperial. Now I've converted from the metric dimensions to imperial. It says between 380 and 389. I measured this one. One of the ones that was on, this one was actually on the 3-jaw chuck, and it come to 378. So we're going to shoot for, that's a little bit less than the tolerances allowed on that or called for, but we've got 3/4 now, 750, minus the 380 we're looking for. So we've got 370 thousandths to take off. So I'm going to touch off. And I'll set a dimension. All right, again, we'll start with about 60 thousandths. And we're going to go to the witness mark. All right, we're ready to get a measurement now. 9 more thousandths to go. Put a little bit of a lead-in chamfer for these threads that will be on here. I'm going to also go ahead and cut the thread relief. Okay, obviously we can't get to this side over here right now, but what I'm going to do is put the parting tool back in there and part this piece off. When we get the 3 pieces done like that, we'll turn them back in here. This is plenty of good shoulder to hold in the collet. All right, I'm going to pull the parting tool back up to where we made that witness mark before, and we'll part this one off. All right, of course that one fell down in the drink. I'll fish that out. Then I'll pull this out and do the same thing, cut off to the next 2 pieces and bring it back when we get ready to for the next step. All right, we've got all 3 of the pieces to this point now. This is where the center section will be here. Long thread and the short thread will be over here. What I'm going to do is use this part where the short thread is going to be, using that to hold it in the collet now. And we're going to cut the flat on there, and that flat is only it's 3/8 of an inch, just about the width of a wrench. And remember, that's to come down from the 3/4 to 17 millimeter, which in this case is 44 thousandths off of each side. And there shouldn't be any issue getting all that at one time. Now we'll just roll the collet block over, 180 degrees, line it up. before I leave that, I'm going to check it with the 17 millimeter just to be sure. Yep, that's fine. All right, I'll do the same thing to the other two pieces, and then we'll go back to the lathe. All right, I'm over here back at the lathe now, and we got the three pieces to this point. Of course, we've got the diameter turn, we've got the stud for the long threads turned down to dimension. We've got the flats on there. Now we're going to put it back in the collet chuck. And it is a little, there we go. Still got plenty to hold. Now that witness mark we put on there before, we're going to turn this down to the 380 as well for the short stud. I like to set the carriage stop just so I don't mess up this late in the game. All right, we've got 85 more thousandths to go. All right, so there's the first of the three. Got some thread relief cut in there. Do the same thing to the other two, and then we'll be ready to put the change gears in and start cutting some threads. All right, I've got the change gears in now for the 1.5 pitch, 1.5 pitch. What we're going to do, and first off, I'm going to set my compound up here. I'm sorry, yes, it's compound. I'm going to set that to 0. Then I'm going to pull in the cross slide until we just touch off. And I've already made a scratch pass to verify that I've got the correct change gears in. But I've got the cross slide set on 0, and I've got the DRO up here set on 0 as well. Now, to cut metric threads with this lathe, which has an imperial lead screw, once I engage the half nut, I need to leave it engaged. So I've messed up a couple metric threads in the past of where I would disengage the half nuts, and it's not impossible, but it's close to impossible to get them back lined up. So I'm going to engage the half nut, and I put that piece of tape on there just as kind of a reminder. If I reach down here for it out of habit, maybe that will stop me. So I've got the RPMs turned down now, and I'm going to get my finger on the power button, because once we get to this thread relief in here, I want to stop the feed, stop the power. I'll back the cross slide out, put the lathe in reverse, back it up, bring this back in, cross slide back into 0, and advance the compound. So I'm going to advance the compound now. Half nuts are engaged. Compound set at the correct angle. So here we go. Back it out, put it in reverse. Back and forward. Bring the compound back to 0. Cross slide back to 0. I think I must have gone about 3 turns there. Okay. Advance the compound and engage power again, leaving the half nuts alone. One turn is sufficient. I like to reach for it then. All right, got the lathe in reverse, backing up. And repeat that process. Let me raise this camera up just a little bit so that you can see what I'm actually doing on the power buttons here. I'm taking about 10 thousandths at a time on the compound, which obviously is not a full 10 thousandths since it's setting at an angle. All right, I'm going to make one more pass, and then I'm going to test it with a nut. I've cut several of these 10 millimeter by 1.5 pitch threads in the past, and from memory, I know on the compound about 40 to 44 is going to be correct. So this will make 40 thousandths right here. Put it back in reverse or forward. I'm going to back up a little bit further this time so I've got room to get the nut in there. As long as I leave the half nut engaged, it doesn't matter how far I go in either direction. And there is a good thread. That's on 40. So with everything set just like it is, turn this piece right around. my compound back at 0. And just to look at it, I'm going to bring it up and be sure it's everything's still set. That was just a minor scratch pass there. And we'll repeat that process for the short end. As short as that thread is, I don't need to look away. I said before I was taking 10 thousandths on the compound each time. I'm not. I'm taking 5 thousandths each time. And this should bring it to the 40 thousandths again. Uh-oh. All right, it's another good thread. So I'm going to do the same thing on the other two pieces. I've got a burr I need to clear off right there before I take that out. And since it's cut, I'm going to go ahead and disengage the half nut so it's not feeding in while I'm clearing that burr out of there. Didn't have quite enough thread relief on this one. All right. there's one of our mounting bolts made. I'll do the same thing to the other two and bring you back for a recap. All right, I believe we're ready to wind this one up. I think I pointed out at the beginning of this video, I've never had this face plate on. I might have called it a back plate to begin with, but of course this is a face plate. I don't believe I've ever had it on the lathe. But we're going to try it now with these new mounting bolts we just made. If everything works all right, I'll probably put a little Loctite on this part, on the studs that's going into the face plate. All right, let me wipe this off. Now the way the collets, or I'm sorry, the way the chucks and the back plate, face plate and all mount on this lathe, it has these will go in these holes here. Then it has a locking ring that slides over that, slide between the nut, slides in this area here between the nut and the stud. Alright, that goes on. Now we'll tighten the 3 nuts down, swing the lock ring around. The only thing that Loctite would do would be to keep these from pulling out of the face plate itself whenever I'm taking this off. It's on there now. Let's see. I think it must be pretty well balanced. I'm not feeling any vibration in the lathe. I'm at about 600 RPMs here. All right, I think that's a success on this one. We'll call this video complete. Thanks for watching. We'll see you on the next video.